What's up everyone? Today's video is something a little bit different. We are going to be building an in-ear monitor rig, or an IEM rig for short. If you're watching this video, you probably kind of already know what that is, but just in case you don't, essentially what it will do is allow myself and the rest of my bandmates in Carcosa to actually hear what we're playing live. If you've ever played any live show, what you're probably used to is having earplugs in, hopefully, please use earplugs, and then just listening to whatever is coming through the monitors on the floor of the venue. So with an in-ear monitor rig, basically what it does is eliminate the need for that, because your monitors are directly in your ears, so you can actually hear what is going on and have complete control of your own mix individually from each of your band members. Up until this point in my band's career, we've just been using earplugs and listening to whatever the monitor at the front of the stage gives us, other than Travis, because he needs the click, because if he goes off the click, our whole set is ruined, but that's a whole other story. But anyways, this system should allow for all of us to become better musicians that are more tight with each other, because we'll actually be able to hear what is going on. And for this video, I got a lot of help from my friend Chris Young, who's going to be helping me to build the rig as you're about to see. And also, before we begin, I have to give a massive thank you to Sweetwater for sending over all of the gear that you're seeing in this video. It's crazy to me that they were willing to do this to help me and my band out. I still can't really believe it. But if you're interested in grabbing any of this gear for yourself, go check out the link in the description and the pinned comment below. It's an affiliate link as well, so if you buy anything over at Sweetwater using that link, it helps my channel directly. With that being said, I'm going to grab my camera and take you along with me to the jam space. Let's go. Okay, so we're over at the jam space with my friend Chris. So like I was saying in the intro, I don't really know too much about in-ear monitor rigs, which is why I wanted to bring you along so you can help explain it to me and the rest of the audience who's watching who might also not know what exactly is going on. The gist of it is basically it's something that will let us hear ourselves when we actually play. We've played a bunch of shows over the years with various different things, many of which was just earplugs, and whatever the stage sounded like is what we got. So this will hopefully help us become like way better musicians, sound better on stage, because we'll actually be able to hear everything. But to actually do that, it requires a lot. This is all the stuff sent over by Sweetwater, so we're gonna do like a really quick explanation of most of the parts and what each of them do, because I don't fully understand it either. So I would love to be explained as to what is going on here. So we can maybe start with this guy over here.
Yeah, so this is a mic splitter. This allows the vocal mics to go to two places, one to the front of the stage for the audience to hear, the other one to the band. Yeah, here we have, these are wireless in-ear headphone amps, or the in-ear monitor systems. We got 4 of them, one for each band member, and they allow you to hear yourself, but without being tethered by a cable. We also have a whole lot of cables, lots of cables to hook everything up. Under here is a antenna combiner for all of the in-ear transmitters, just keeps it tidy. Down below we have power conditioners. These are just really good rack mount power bars, and then on the bottom, 2 big 6-unit rack cases to hold everything and transport them.
Just to touch on that a little bit, the reason why we decided to go with 2 separate rack cases rather than one giant one is we're hopefully future-proofing ourselves a little bit, where in the future, you know, if we have to do a show where we potentially fly or something like that, you can't really bring like a giant like 30-unit rack on a plane. It's impossible. So this way, what we're hoping is that if we need to take this on a plane or something like that, we can have 2 separate rack cases that could actually come with us with hopefully minimal, you know, changes, or hopefully taking nothing out of them, because they should be small and light enough to do so. And pretty much one of the 2 racks is going to be dedicated to all of the in-ear monitor system stuff. And then the other one is basically going to be our guitar rig. So myself and Cooper are keeping more or less the same gear that we were using on the last 2 tours, which is like quad cortex, drop tune pedal, so on and so forth. So with this system, our goal is basically we roll up to the stage, we have 2 rack units, we unbox both of them, we plug in like only a couple of cables, and we're good to go. So these 2 racks will be able to plug into each other to make like one complete system, more or less. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's the end goal.
And that's the end of my understanding as well. So in addition to all the gear that Sweetwater provided to us, we also have a couple of pieces of our own gear that we already had. So we've had this for like 4 years and never used it because we don't know how to do it. And that changes today. So what exactly is this thing?
This is a mixer. That's all it is. It's a digital rack mixer. So you have all your inputs and you have some outputs, and you can control it from an iPhone or an Android or whatnot. And so everyone can control what they're hearing, or you can control what you're hearing in your ears separate from what Travis wants to hear in his ears or Cooper.
Yeah, and that's obviously really handy because sometimes, you know, Travis, for example, likes his clicks to be very different than the rest of the bands. Like if he's playing triplets, he wants the click to be in a triplet, which to me is really weird because I would never play that way. But this will kind of help us to, you know, each have our own individual mix, of course, because everybody wants to hear things differently. Like I don't want to hear Cooper. He probably doesn't want to hear me. We just want to hear ourselves playing, and we can do all of that with this, which is great. And then we have a bunch of other things which I will grab. This is more or less what we've been using on tour. So it's still mounted to this shelf. So we use like a quad cortex and then a whammy drop tune pedal ×2, one for me, one for Cooper. So this is staying more or less the same. The only other thing that I think we're keeping the same as what we were previously using is this, which is more or less myself and Cooper's wireless guitar units. These are both the Sennheiser EWD. We've used these on the past 2 tours. They seem fine, so we're keeping them because it's obviously a lot better than not having cables. And if these for some reason don't work, then we just have these long, not XLR 1/4 inch cables that we just run across the stage, which, you know, does the trick as well. But ideally these will work. So that's like a super brief explanation of pretty much all the gear that we're using in this video. Now, Chris and myself, mostly Chris, is gonna help me assemble this thing and explain things along the way if need be. So if we run into any problems, you're gonna see that. But for the most part, this is gonna be basically just a time lapse of us building this. So let's do it.
Let's go. Cool, so generally what we're gonna do is we're gonna have our inputs, so all of we got vocal mics, we'll be putting some drums into the front here too, Travis's E8010. They're gonna go into here, into the inputs of the mixer. And then down at the bottom, all these XLR outputs are going from here into the in-ear transmitters.
Okay, so it took a little longer than expected. We had to come back on a second day, which is why we're wearing different clothes, but we got it all done now for the most part. There's a couple little odds and ends. I need to go home and play with the quad cortexes to like adjust tone settings, but that doesn't really matter. The gist of it is here and done, and it will be glorious when we finally test it out. So last part of this video obviously is to explain what exactly is going on here. So Chris is kind of just going to take us through all of the parts of the rig and briefly explain what he did.
So the rig is built in 2 parts. We have the in-ear rig down here and the guitar rig down below. And they do connect together, but they can also separate for transporting. On top, we have our power conditioner for the in-ear rig. It's just a fancy power bar, and this one's actually pretty cool. It's got some lights on it that we can change colors.
And it even does green.
There we go, green, perfect. And then below, this next one is the antenna combiner. And all this one is doing is, instead of giving all of these their each individual antenna and power supply, it's putting them all together into this one unit. So it's nice and clean, less cables, easier to manage. But then these down here, these are the in-ear transmitters. So we have 4 for each member of the band. They transmit the audio to these packs that you can put on your belt so you can listen to your instrument nice and clearly wherever as well on stage. You can move around, you're not tethered to any cables. These are the Sennheiser guitar wireless systems. So 2 of them for 2 guitars. There's no live bass player in the band, so that's all done in tracks from the interface, which I will show you in a second. And then down below we have our mic splitter. And this is a pretty key thing to doing a self-sufficient in-ear rig. Currently, we're only really using the splitters for the first 2 channels for lead vocal and backup vocals. But the idea is you plug your microphone cable into here, and then in the back, it splits it into 2 signals, so you can put it to 2 places, like the in-ears and the front of house separately. So that's the front of the in-ear rig. Let's head to the back of the in-ear rig and see where everything's kind of hooked up to, because this box here is kind of the brains of the whole operation. It's the Behringer XR18. This is the digital mixer that we have all of the signals going into, mixing to how the artists want to hear themselves, and then outputting to the in-ear transmitters. And so this is a really awesome compact unit that's super handy, and it can be controlled by a Wi-Fi device like a phone or a tablet when you're on stage, so you can dial in your in-ear mixes without having to yell at the sound guy to do what you want him to. Yeah, last little bit is the top here. This is just a patch panel for what is going to be going to the sound guy. So we have a long snake here. So long snake, not labeled yet, but they will be. And these are pretty much just transmitting the other splits from the vocals, the splits from the guitar down below, which we'll get to in a sec, and then also some of the bass and backing tracks from the interface and from Logic, wherever they play their backing tracks from.
And one thing to note, before doing this, we had everything in our backtracks going through one mono send, which was easy, but it also kind of sucked because, again, we don't have a bassist. So having both the bass tracks and the extra guitars and the synths and everything as one single mono track obviously isn't ideal. So this will help let us split it up so we have the bass on its own track and get that nice and clear.
Yeah, so, and because you have two, you can kind of choose what you want to do. You can either have a stereo backing track feed where you mix the bass in, but it's stereo, or you can separate them and have bass completely isolated in one and have your backing tracks fully isolated in the other. Cool. And then next we have down below is the guitar world. Let's go to the front. This one's pretty simple because all it's housing really is a quad Cortex and a Digitech whammy pedal for each guitar player. And that's about it.
Yeah.
There's really not much else to it. But these are all hooked up to here through a nice easy snake system, which we'll get to in a second as well. And this one, Baena, there will be a whammy pedal here. That's what these are for. Plug them in.
And yeah, the only unfortunate thing about this section, which I knew was going to be a problem, is as you might notice when you take out the rack shelf, the quad Cortex is like pretty inaccessible, which is pretty unfortunate, but luckily the way that we play live is we don't really touch them at all. Like, we have preset tones that switch automatically through MIDI, which I'm sure will be a part coming up. But yeah, pretty much the goal is like we never have to touch any of this stuff because our laptop should be like automatically doing pitch shifting changes through the drop tune pedal right there. And then it should also be doing patch changes on the quad Cortex in real time according to our backtracks. So it's a little annoying that like you can't really access anything, but in theory we should never really have to touch it anyways. And if we need to, you know, you can just like take the whole shelf out and adjust the tone, which I will be doing probably when I get home.
And so one last trip to the back. So the two systems, they are connected by this snake, which is nice because it's a one connector 8-channel snake that you can just detach, and now they're completely separate. So that was the kind of the challenge to figure out how are you going to have them, like it is one rig, but they're two separate boxes. So putting them together in a way where you're not plugging in 8 separate cables every single time, this is a nice, super easy way to just stack them on top of each other, connect them, and then tie them in. And then that's all 8 channels that's going back and forth between the wireless and the multi-track or the multi-channel quad Cortex, all of that. It's all hooked up into this.
Yeah, exactly. And then one final thing to mention is the last part is there's also a USB cable right here. So the laptop will just sit right on top, plug the USB in, and that's done. That'll control all the, you know, MIDI changes and the XR18 as well with one USB cable. So pretty much when we get to a venue, we should only need to plug in the snake, the USB cable, 2 power cables, maybe only 1, and that's basically it. So we tried to make it as simple as possible for ourselves. It will be even more simple in the future when we actually put labels on everything, just to dummy proof in case Chris isn't there with us, which he won't be. because, you know, he built the thing, and if I need to do any troubleshooting, that'll make it easy to kind of figure out what's going on. Yeah. And that's pretty much it, I think.
Last thing is just this giant box.
Right.
This is an antenna. It's hooked up to the antenna combiner at the front, and it's a directional one. So usually the antennas that look like, where are they? The ones that look like this, these just transmit everywhere in a big sphere. Whereas this one is kind of like a telescope in a way. It shoots the signal in a direction, which you just get less interference and better connectivity, so that when you're playing on stage, you'll be able to just hear yourself better. But it's not necessary, especially in smaller venues, but if you are playing in a bigger venue, this will probably help a lot.
Okay, so that pretty much does it for this video. Again, huge thank you to you, Chris, for basically doing almost everything. I definitely maybe would have been able to do this myself, but it's way more handy having somebody explain it along the way. Is much appreciated. Thank you so much. And also, of course, thank you to Sweetwater for sending over pretty much all the gear that you saw in this video. If you want to buy any of that stuff, there are links in the description and the pinned comment below. And I think that's basically it. Chris, did you want to plug anything or no?
Go check out Drumeo. It's my day job.
Last but not least, of course, a big thank you to all my Patreon members whose names are on the screen at this point in time. This video doesn't really apply for the perks that you can get, but you can normally get guitar tabs, audio downloads, stems, or a shout out on the screen. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, go check that out. And that pretty much does it for this video. Again, big thank you to Chris, Sweetwater, and we'll see you next time.